Conditions May Apply by CinnamonPinecones. Read by Distracted by Books. Chapter 12. Laws are threats made by the dominant socio-economic ethnic group in a given nation. It's just a promise of violence that's enacted, and Izuku was losing sleep. He'd been throwing himself around the city like an adrenaline junkie monkey every night for the past week. He was absolutely exhausted, but he'd never been happier in his life. However, it was mid-January. Izuku had been lucky that the brewery was still weatherproofed enough to not have ice forming all over the place, but the rest of the city was not spared from that. Ice and snow had become a slipping hazard, and several times in the past few weeks, Izuku had almost slipped and fallen off the sides of buildings. But these runs were his lifeline. He was addicted. He couldn't give it up. Against his better judgment, Izuku found himself out on a Saturday night, looking down over the city. He could see the nicer parts of Mustafa, where he used to live, from up here, but he couldn't find it in his heart to miss it. He had never been happy there. He'd never really been happy anywhere. It was strange to feel so content. He didn't have much, but he earned everything he did have all on his own. He didn't owe anyone anything, and he had somewhere to run away where no one could find him. He hadn't been in actual danger in his old apartment since Hisashi left, but he had never felt welcome there. He thought that place was his home, but now he doesn't think it ever was. Home was somewhere you felt welcome. It wasn't somewhere you had to fight tooth and nail to prove your worth as a human just to have a roof over your head. No, that place was never his home. The rooftops, this city, and that warehouse was his home. And right now, he was looking down into the alleyway to someone getting mugged at gunpoint in his home. Damn it, that was Shimamoto-san from the mini-mart. Whether he knew it or not, that man was the only reason Izuku wasn't freezing to death at night. He was the one that let the homeless people charge their phones in the outlet outside his store, the same outlet where Izuku had been able to plug in the soldering iron he used to fix the generator. Shimamoto-san was a good man. He didn't deserve this. He couldn't let him get hurt. Before he even made the conscious decision to step in, his body was scaling down the alley walls like a cat. The man with the gun was yelling, demanding that Shimamoto-san give him the money he was hiding, and Shimamoto-san looked close to tears, insisting that he didn't have anything else on him. It looked like things were about to escalate, and Izuku couldn't just let that happen. Izuku leapt down from a second-story windowsill and disarmed the man with a flying kick. The weapon clattered to the ground, and Izuku landed with a roll as the man clutched his possibly broken hand to his chest. Oops. Izuku didn't let himself feel bad about it and jumped at the man, hitting him in the pressure point the same way he had done all those months ago. It worked like a charm, and the man went careening into the ground unconscious. He bent down and took the wad of cash from the man's hand, presuming it was what he'd just stolen from Shimamoto-san. He turned around and handed it to him. "Here you go, sir. This is yours, right?" The store owner just gaped at him with an awed expression. You should probably call the cops, sir," Izuku said, trying to snap Shimamoto-san out of his daze. That seemed to do the trick, because the store owner shook his head and blinked before speaking. He has my phone." Izuku felt a little dumb. He'd just gotten mugged. Of course that guy had his phone. "Oh yeah, that makes sense. I'll grab it for you. Did you see where he put it?" "Front left pocket?" Shimamoto-san responded, still looking a little bit in shock. Izuku fished it out and handed it back. "Here you go." Wordlessly, he took it and started to dial. Once he started to talk to the operator, Izuku figured he should probably check and make sure the man didn't have any more weapons on him. Turns out that was a good call. He found a switchblade in his right pocket, which Izuku promptly transferred to his own pocket. It was just to keep it from this mugger guy. He'd give it to the police when they showed up. Next, Izuku found the man's wallet. He opened it to look at the ID, but upon inspecting the contents, Izuku almost wanted to kick the man again. He had like 20,000 yen in here. What the hell is he going around mugging people for? Asshole. Wait, he couldn't be here when the cops showed up. He was 12, and he was in the red lights district at 1:30 in the morning. At the very least, he would get in trouble for breaking curfew, but there was no way he was getting out of that situation without them trying to call his mother and take him home. Casting a glance over to Shimamoto-san to make sure he was still on the phone and distracted, Izuku put the man's wallet back, pocketing the money. Sue him. He was starving and nearly out of funds, and this guy was an a-hole anyway, and ran, scaling the alley wall in record time. He could hear Shimamoto-san shouting for him to wait, but there was no way in hell that was happening. Okay, Izuku had definitely reverse mugged someone this time. Whoops. Adrenaline high Izuku was frickin' insane. What the frick was he thinking? He just dropped down on a mugging, KO'd the guy, frickin' looted the mugger's unconscious body, and ran from the cops. Oh crap. Oh no. Kami, what was he thinking? And he stole another weapon from a criminal. He stole another weapon from a criminal. He took down another criminal for the third time. 2's a coincidence, but 3? 3's a trend. Izuku sat confused in the corner of his stairwell. That burning hope that he could be something more was screaming at him. Izuku wasn't that lucky. It wasn't pure chance that he'd come out of those scrapes on top. That was him and all his hard work that got him out alive. This was what he'd always wanted. It felt so right, like a piece of a puzzle clicking into place. All he ever wanted to do was help people. Sure, he got a heck of a runner's high from his new hobby, but nothing compared to knowing with certainty that you made a difference, a positive change. Izuku had spent his whole life being told he was worthless. No one's life had ever been better off for having known him. Whoever he was when he saved those people was different. The things they did mattered. Their being there mattered. They mattered. And that person was him. It never mattered before. Izuku had spent his whole life not mattering, and now at least some part of him did. It felt so close to being loved, and he couldn't let it go now that he had it. This hope was going to kill him. It had swollen to a bursting point, and now it was a forest fire in his chest, and it wasn't going to go out until there was nothing left for it to burn. The next morning found Izuku a little more level-headed. Legally, yeah, he kind of screwed up, but morally, he stands by that. That guy was holding up a person who was known community-wide for his kindness just to get some more money to line his pockets. Not cool. It's not like Izuku took his watch and credit cards, and anyway, you don't walk around uptown with that much money if you can't afford to lose it. Everyone knows that. He probably just came into town looking for cheap hookers and got a little too cocky. You learn your lessons. Plus, he was probably going to jail anyways. What's he going to use that money for there? Yeah, Izuku didn't feel too bad about taking the money. DJ ate all her treats, and he was going to buy her more if he ever wanted to win her affection. The money was going to a good cause. He was still a little bit nervous. He had very much broken the law last night. He had a mask on, so he's pretty sure Shimamoto-san wouldn't recognize him. All he had to go on was his voice and height, and he didn't seem the type to rat him out anyway. But Izuku was still a criminal now, which was an uncomfortable thing to think about. What would they even charge him for? Theft was all they could pin on him, right? He didn't use a weapon or initiate the fight. Well, he kinda initiated the fight, but he was in an alley with an aggressive man who had a gun. That's a good enough reason to claim self-defense. Izuku would have to do some research on the law to see what he could possibly get charged for in the event that Shimamoto-san both recognized him and ratted him out to the cops, which seemed unlikely, but it was good to be prepared. Wait, crap. Could they charge him for vigilantism? That had to be premeditated, right? He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. He didn't go out looking for trouble, but he had no way to prove that. Damn it. He was jumping around rooftops with his face fully covered and a knife strapped to his belt. That didn't exactly paint a picture of innocence. Oh dear, he had his research cut out for him. Izuku was too paranoid to show his face in public for the entirety of Sunday, but at the same time, it felt like his skin was crawling, staying here. He needed to feel that feeling again. He needed to do something important. He needed to be something important. He needed to matter so badly it was tearing him apart. He felt sick with it. But it was stupid and reckless and illegal. He'd finally gotten this freedom that he never even knew he wanted, and he wasn't going to risk it all for something so trivial as feeling important. So he stayed put. When Monday morning rolled around, he knew he needed to head to the library. He had to see just how much trouble he could be in. Teachers tried to pin the blame on him all the time. Who's to say the cops won't do the same? Everyone loves to blame the quirkless kid, and he was not about to get life in prison or something because he didn't know his rights. Maybe it was a bit too paranoid, but knowing too much never hurt anybody. Knowing too much was going to hurt somebody. It was going to hurt several somebodies, Izuku included. It turns out he couldn't get charged for much of anything until he was 14. Something about being a child and not fully responsible for his own actions, whatever. That's not what mattered. What really mattered was Izuku couldn't get charged with vigilantism. Ever. He almost burst out laughing when he read the official government definition of vigilantism. It was committing unlicensed acts of heroism being defined as the acts of a hero in the line of duty. But that's not the kicker. The kicker was that a hero was defined as someone who is licensed to use their quirk in law enforcement. Under those dry definitions, it seemed like Izuku couldn't even be licensed as a hero without a quirk, but that was all semantics and poor wording. UA made the news a few years back when they publicly stated that quirkless individuals could be admitted to the hero course. They wouldn't have made that announcement and gone uncorrected by the government for so long if quirkless people couldn't legally be licensed heroes. But that poor wording made a loophole. Heroes, acts of heroism, and by extension acts of vigilantism were defined by the use of a quirk. He didn't have a quirk, ergo he could not be charged with vigilantism. So as long as Izuku let the other person swing first, legally he could go out and do that every night. Of course, that doesn't mean that he wouldn't face consequences if he got caught. He was a homeless 12-year-old. He would be put in the system, but nothing could be pinned on his record. Izuku had never been so glad that the government was run by bigoted, quirkist a-holes. Oh yeah, he was about to make this everyone's problem.